David Kirkpatrick, when you think of Steve Case, what do you think about?
Wow. Well, I think of my case. I worked at Time Warner, so, I think a lot about that deal. I think of having been on AOL. I think of him having kind of pioneered consumer use of the Internet. I mean, we didn't call it the Internet then. We called it AOL. But, yeah, I think of him as a major pioneer and actually something of a friend who's been involved in other Techonomy conferences quite a few times.
Here's an informative chart. We showed this earlier. Let's do it again. The green circle is where Steve Case got out. The green circle is where Kirkpatrick loaded the boat on Time Warner shares. So there we are. But I talk about the Facebook effect, Steve. I'm a huge fan of David's.
And I'm a
work.
fan of Tom's too.
What is the effect forward for all this technology we're living every day?
Well, David's book and Facebook are a great example of what happened in the second wave. Once that first wave was built and people were all connected to the Internet, then the focus was building on top of the Internet. Facebook didn't exist at the beginning of the second wave. Now one of the most valuable, influential companies in the world, arguably the most influential media company, even though they don't own content because of the way they distribute, which just shows you what happens with disruption. The company can come out of nowhere and be a global giant. We'll see other companies like that come out of the third wave. Instead of focusing on social media and apps, they're just going to be focusing on key parts of our lives, like how do we stay healthy, or how do our kids get educated, or how do we manage energy, or even how we think about and consume food. Some big parts of our lives, big sectors of the economy, actually haven't been disrupted that much in the first wave or the second wave, but they will be in the third wave. But it will require a different mindset, different playbook, which is why I finally decided to put pen to paper and write a book.
But Steve, it's unclear to me what Facebook becomes in 5-10 years from now. What kind of company will it be? At the moment, they're very acquisitive. They have Oculus. They have other parts. They integrate it. How big will they become, and how far-reaching will they be?
Well, they've done a great job in taking that initial idea, initial service, and expanding it in new ways. Even this week, and yesterday particularly, they launched a new initiative, Facebook Live, with a 24-hour channel, which is getting a lot of attention. But as you mentioned, they're not just focusing on how do they evolve that platform, involve the Facebook brand, but when they've seen interesting new brands coming up, interesting disruptive companies, whether it be an Instagram or WhatsApp or virtual reality with Oculus, they say we want to be part of that future, and they jump into it through an acquisition. I think big companies in the third wave will need to understand what's happening with these entrepreneurs and not just watch them with skepticism, but jump in and figure out a way to partner with them, or in some cases buy them.
David, jump in here.
Well, I love talking about Facebook, but I wanted to make a comment about the third wave that connected to Facebook, and I love that Steve is focusing on this disruptive potential of this next phase for all industries. I totally believe it. But one way to think about that is what AOL did and what Facebook really did, and it's one of the reasons I wrote a book about Facebook, is it empowered the individual in a fundamental way that really changes the nature of economic landscape. And the third wave, in a sense, is all industries having to adapt to a world where consumers have a voice through live video and all kinds of things that gives them unprecedented capabilities to feed back to companies, to say, I don't like what you do, to demand that they be more socially responsible, and all kinds of things.
No, I agree with that. One of the things that's been interesting to watch is as people have gotten more familiar with technology because of Facebook, because of Twitter, because of Waze, because of Uber, and then they go to their doctor's office and it feels like it's kind of a third world, or they go to their kid's school and it feels like things haven't changed.
Don't use Wikipedia.
That's going to put more pressure on these industries to figure out how to invent new things, and it's part of the consumer. It's partly technological possibility, but also consumers pushing it. But a key theme of this book, and it ties in with your work with Techonomy, is it's not just about the software. It's not just about the engineering. You need strategic partners to be successful in third wave, and you need to engage with governments on policy. And Techonomy has been a leader in creating that forum where the technologists can get together with the policymakers, and we need more of that kind of discussion in the third wave, because these are complicated issues. They're most of these industries are regulated, so you can't just focus on the software. You can't just focus on the app. You have to focus on partnerships with people in that industry and engagement on policy with government.
Let's drag in Francine Lacroix from London. Francine?
Yeah, David, to your point, the fact that we haven't really harnessed, I guess, the full power of Facebook or other companies like that, how can a central bank, how can a government use it better to understand what people are looking at? We still have a huge productivity puzzle here in the UK. I mean, the polls are ridiculous. We didn't even foresee a Tory win. Can Facebook help with simple stuff like that?
Well, I think I'd love to hear Steve's thoughts on this, but in fact, it's a great point that we have all this data about the economy that's emerging from a digitized, connected landscape that the government and the regulators and the financial regulators are not really tapping into in order to have a much clearer, real-time view of what's happening in the economy. I think they make a lot of mistakes as a result. Do you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, actually, I think there's too much focus on regulatory issues around financial services, this issue of too big to fail, or should the banks be broken up. I actually think, and I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal this week, that the real place to focus are these big banks too big to innovate, because these fintech startups are doing interesting things around the edges. What they're going to be undone not by regulations, they're going to be undone by startups attacking every part of their franchise.
Moynihan or Diamond are going to read your book. What's your prescription for James Diamond to keep the Fortress Diamond momentum going? He's got
lean into the future. Focus on what's happening next. Position the company with what you're doing already internally, but then build a network around your company. Figure out a way to understand what the entrepreneurs are doing. Figure out how to partner with startups, invest in startups,
Are you invested in fintech, Steve, at the moment?
We are invested in fintech. A number of different companies, including some that are focused on the lending platforms, including we're looking at a lot of ways to reach out to the unbanked. The big banks don't really serve them. It's payday lenders kind of ripping them off, and we're trying to figure out new products and services to reach that untapped